I'm really excited about this next presentation because we met with Bridget's Dream nonprofit, and she really enlightened me on some things that I wasn't aware of, at least not to the extent that she made me more knowledgeable of. So I want to bring up, because one of the things that we're realizing, and I'm sure Leah and Kayla will talk about it, is this whole correlation between the sexual exploitation and prostitution and the gang culture. You know what I mean? And so normally we probably attack these with two different type of outreach and two different type of strategies and two different, but there's this correlation. That's what we're talking about. We have to have everyone at the table. Got to have Bridget's Dream with Weave and SETA and the gang outreach workers and everybody working together. So with no further ado, I'll introduce Leah Bird and Kaylee Ronnie.
She's actually going to be okay. Hello everybody. As Khalid mentioned, my name is Leah Albright Bird, and I am the executive director and founder of Bridget's Dream. We're an organization that focuses on prevention, intervention, and restoration of sex trafficking victims.
And my name is Kaylee. I am a co-facilitator for the Sexually Exploited Children and Teens Community Collaborative out of Sac City Unified. And my other co-facilitator is Stacey Bell. She couldn't make it today. And so that's how I became involved with sexually exploited youth. We are seeing it a lot out at the schools.
What I'd like to do is share a poem that a young lady who is a sex trafficking victim wrote before we get into the presentation. She chose to remain anonymous. She says, "All my life I've been rejected. All my life I've been neglected. All of my life I've been disrespected. All I ever wanted was to be protected. People don't understand, and most times I don't either. I just feel scared and alone, and I don't want to feel either. I feel like I'm drowning in a swarm of confusion, praying it's all just a dream, that life is just an illusion. It's self-persecution like a slow suicide. You can run, but you cannot hide. Sometimes I feel like I can't take it anymore. Growing up as a kid, I never dreamed I'd be a whore. I keep hearing this voice inside my head saying you'll never be nothing more and you're better off dead. And it hurts so bad thinking this is all that I'm good at. Thinking about the shoulda, coulda, would haves, knowing that there's nothing I can do, so what's the point in even trying? Knowing that each day I'm slowly dying, what's the point in crying? I'm tired of people always lying to me. Why can't they see this is all I'll ever be? Maybe I should just end it all. I know it's kind of hard when you're in juvenile hall, but that doesn't mean that I can't bash my head up against a wall. I know there's a big world out there, but damn do I feel small. Will anybody answer when I call out for help? My voice has no sound no matter how loud I shout. I found my way in, but I can't find my way out. My interest in sex trafficking is that I'm a 10-year survivor myself. Actually, in March, it'll be 11 years. And I founded Bridget's Dream in memory of a friend of mine who was a sex trafficking victim. She was first exploited at the age of 14. She was murdered on her 22nd birthday by a John in Las Vegas. He met her in the lobby of a casino there, took her up to his hotel room, and proceeded to strangle her to death. So needless to say, that changed my life. I found that out in my 4th year of recovery from the life. And so that changed my whole perspective. It changed my whole course and direction. You know, anybody here ever read the book The Alchemist? Anybody hear of the book The Alchemist? One of the things that the author said was, when you discover your personal legacy, the whole universe conspires to help you achieve it. And so this was something that has been in my heart for a while, but last year was really the catalyst and where I dug my heels in and said, this is the work that I'm going to do. you want to go ahead and advance this? Did you want to share anything else, Kaylee, about the work that you're doing with SAC?
Well, I would like to point out, on the table over here we have an album which features work from girls in Sacramento who are survivors. And I run a student group, they're called Street Team. It stands for Students Together Reducing Exploitation and Trafficking. And they put together the album and it's really powerful. So if you have time, you can check it out.
Absolutely. We've got a bunch of literature over here for you, so don't leave without taking some. All right, so first of all, I just want to highlight that this is a national epidemic at this point. This is not just a foreign issue. A lot of times when we think of human trafficking, human sex trafficking, we think of something that's happening internationally. But the University of Pennsylvania's School of Social Work pointed out that child exploitation is the most hidden form of child abuse found in Northern America right now. Almost 300,000 children are annually at risk for sex trafficking into the sex industry. So let's talk about what sex trafficking is. It's modern day slavery. It's modern day slavery. It is a crime that the media has promoted. I am not anti-hip-hop by any means. I have heard some incredible hip-hop in my lifetime. But I've also heard some hip-hop music that has intentionally sexually exploited women in my community. I've heard some hip-hop that has made pimping synonymous with success. And so we have kids in our schools that aren't even prepared to deal with the fact that pimps are real. It's not a boogeyman. It's not an illusion. There's people that are actually exploiting girls and women in our community. The sex trafficking industry is generating $32 billion annually worldwide. So this is an incredibly lucrative industry, and it's the second largest and fastest growing criminal industry in the world at this point. And unfortunately, and this is something that's fairly new to me, having worked in this field, but it's something I'm starting to come across more and more, is that it's now a criminal industry that gangs are profiting from. I have the privilege of living in Oak Park. I'm an Oak Park resident. And about a year ago, I said I would never live in Oak Park again because I have horrible memories in Oak Park. But as life would have it, full circle, I'm back in Oak Park, and I have the opportunity to interact with some of the female gang members in my community and hear firsthand what's happening within gangs in our community. So let's look at what the definition of sex trafficking is. The TVPA is the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, and it was written in the year 2000 as a federal effort to define what sex trafficking is. And according to that definition, this is when a commercial sex act is induced by force, fraud, or coercion. And the important part is that it says, or in which the person induced to perform such an act has not attained the age of 18. So it's important to emphasize, if a young woman or a young boy, and you'll hear me refer to females a lot, that's just the general issue. This is happening to boys as well. And you'll also hear me refer to pimps as male. There are female pimps, but for the sake of this presentation, don't be surprised if I make that statement again and again. I also need to point out that a victim does not need to be physically transported from one area to another. So we hear the term trafficking and we think of they're being moved to another city. Well, there's girls that are being trafficked in Sacramento that are from Sacramento. So let's look at who's involved in sex trafficking. Well, first there's a recruiter, and this is the person that's gaining the victim's trust. And sometimes this is a boyfriend, a neighbor, or even a family member. Probably about 6 months ago, I got a phone call about a mother in Oak Park who was sexually exploiting her children, ranging from the age of 8 to 16. 2 of those kids were boys. So she was using her children to support a drug habit. And that's not uncommon. That's been happening for a long time. The trafficker is the one who controls the victims. Now this could be the recruiter and it could be the trafficker. So those roles can be played by the same person. But the trafficker is the one who controls the victims. So they're going to make the victim fear leaving, either through abuse, threats, and lies. That's how the trafficker is going to gain power. One example of such a lie, I had a trafficker who told me that he loved me more than my parents did. And because I came from a really, really abusive family environment, it wasn't hard for me to believe that. So then you're looking at the lesser of two evils, so to speak. The illusion of love and acceptance are also powerful deceptions for the victim. It's not just fear and threats that keep victims stuck with their trafficker. Often it's the power play of 1 minute I'm going to abuse you and the next minute I'm going to demonstrate some semblance of love. The victim could be absolutely anybody. The average age of entry in the United States is 12 to 14. There are cases as young as 9 years old. Rachel Lloyd is the founder of GEMS, the Girls Empowerment Movement in New York. She's documented cases as young as 9 years old.
Actually, sorry, just to interject, but that's why the collaborative was started in Sac City, because we had a 9-year-old who was being pimped out in the Bay Area that attended one of our local schools.
Yeah, so that was the catalyst for SECT. I wish that SECT existed when I was in high school. That educators were aware of what's going on in the community so that they could have better protected us. I have a lot of friends who ended up experiencing this atrocity because of the fact that people just weren't informed. And quite obviously, I'm not that old, so this wasn't that long ago. I was 14, 15 years ago. So the next person that's involved in sex trafficking is a purchaser. So that's the trick or the John, and this person is funding the sex trafficking industry by purchasing services. Sadly enough, these individuals are often pedophiles. I remember getting phone calls when I was still in the life. We would get phone calls from men in the community that would ask for girls that looked young. I remember having a conversation with one and I asked, well, how young do you want her to look? And he said, do you have anybody that looks like they're 12? And they get to sit in the secrecy of their home because of technology. They can order up girls on the internet and never go hit the streets, never put themselves in harm's way. So who's at risk? The greatest risk factor is age. So naturally, pimps and exploiters are going to go after the most vulnerable in our community. Youth who have a history of abuse, so that's emotional, physical, or sexual abuse. A lot of the girls that I've come in contact with have some history of sexual abuse, so that's very common. Parental drug use. As I mentioned, some parents are selling their children. Children who run away. Studies show that by the third time a child runs away, there's an 85% chance that she's going to become a victim of sex trafficking. When I became a victim of sex trafficking, it was my third time running away from home. So I fell into that statistical number. Children who have a history of CPS involvement are at incredibly high risk. When there's been numerous foster care placements. Bridget, the young lady that my organization is named after, she had 13 foster placements. When I met her, she was 14. History of being in the juvenile justice system. If you talk to anybody that either volunteers or works at juvenile hall, they will tell you about the overwhelming amount of girls that are being arrested for sex trafficking charges. And the Federal Bureau of Investigation has the Innocence Lost Task Force. There's actually 47 nationwide. And so sometimes the best option is to detain these girls. There's not enough beds to put them in. There's not enough programs to serve them with. And so the best option is to detain them, keep them safe at juvenile hall, and then release them at a time where perhaps their pimp has moved on. Homeless youth are at incredible risk. And lastly, and of course this is why we're here, is to emphasize gang involvement and how that puts youth at risk of sexual exploitation. So real quick, and then we'll talk about the intersection of gangs and sex trafficking. I want to emphasize what the impact is on victims. First of all, there's social stigma and isolation. A lot of times in the work that I do, I stay away from the term prostitute, because prostitute carries such negative stigma in our community and we associate it with choice. There's so much social stigma and isolation that a lot of times girls aren't willing to share, and so because they're not willing to share, they can't get the help that they need. The next thing is post-traumatic stress disorder and other mental illnesses. I have PTSD, chronic PTSD, which means it's not going away. Acute PTSD means it'll come and it'll be there for a short period of time. Chronic means I'll be dealing with it for the rest of my life. If my life gets too stressful, I start having nightmares about pimps, johns, and whatever all else. And I've been out of the life for almost 11 years, as I mentioned. So, and that's with extensive counseling, medication, and all sorts of personal investments I've had to make just to get to a place of normalcy. So imagine a young woman that's 14, 15 trying to get out and the things that she's going to encounter. Then there's medical issues, STDs and TB, high rates of HIV and other medical issues. There's severe alcohol and drug addiction. I personally was addicted to methamphetamines, almost killed myself on meth. So then I started snorting coke because I thought that would be a better alternative at that point. That was my 15-year-old logic. So alcohol and drug addiction are a huge part of this. Debilitatingly low self-esteem. I don't know if anybody heard President Obama's address on human trafficking. Now, there have been There have been other efforts made in the community to address this, but this was the first speech I heard from a president that actually spent this speech focused on human trafficking, and I cried like a baby. The reason why I cried was because he talked about what is lost when we don't rehabilitate these girls. So that applies to me. There's strengths and abilities that I have that the community wouldn't have been able to benefit from if there weren't people in my community investing in my redemption and my rehabilitation. And then naturally there's imprisonment, and the last one is death. The lifespan for a girl upon entry is 8 years. 8 years from entry. Bridget, first exploited at 14, at 22, she was gone. 8 years. So some of the myths are that teens choose to prostitute themselves. If they really want it out, they can leave at any time. Absolutely not true. They're either trapped physically or mentally. Teens are willing participants and they know what they're getting into. No, they don't. No, they don't. Teens get paid to do this. The money goes to their hand and it's exchanged and put into the hands of their exploiter. Teens enjoy sex anyway, so why not get paid? That's a phrase that pimps use. This only happens to females. Again, as I've mentioned already, that's not true. And this only happens to bad kids or kids from bad families. I've met girls from all walks of life that have been impacted by this. So why do gangs exploit? This is from the National Gang Intelligence Center and the FBI's Crime Against Children's Unit. Juvenile prostitution is expanding as an additional source of income for a lot of gangs, primarily for its high and steady financial rewards. And there's a perceived low risk of apprehension and punishment. I mean, think about it. You're selling drugs, you're putting yourself at risk. You send a girl, you're farther removed from the crime. Gangs are diversifying their income by reducing or eliminating drug trafficking activities. I've been in and out of the Oak Park community since I was a little girl. And I don't see people stand on the corner selling drugs. So you have to wonder, where are they? What are they doing? What are the gangs doing at this point to support their criminal activities? So how do they exploit? Gang members pimp in association with other gang members. So they do circuit field trips. Pimps will travel with or send their victims with other pimps and their victims on multi-city tours. Bridget Street, my organization, we do outreach twice a month. In 8 outreaches in the city of Sacramento, we encountered over 100 victims of sex trafficking in 8 outreaches. And this isn't just people that are local, this is people that are coming here from other communities and exploiting girls here. Gang members pimp in association with other gang members because there's safety. They can protect victims on the track. They can share intelligence. They can talk about the best tracks, and they will update each other about law enforcement. And they resource share, so they'll share hotel rooms, they're sharing vehicles, they're sharing gas expenses. There's victim enforcement and discipline, so if your girl gets out of line, you can have one of the other gang members check her, abuse her, assault her. And then there's gang pimp mentorship of younger gang pimps. There's videos, music videos that gangs in our community are putting out on YouTube. Just you can YouTube them, where they're rapping and they're bragging about the fact that they're exploiting girls in my community. I have a real problem with that. I was driving home a couple months ago and I saw a big group of gang members at Oak Park Market videotaping a music video with their red rags on and everything. I don't know why in the world the people at the Oak Park Market would allow them to do that, but they allowed them to do that. And then I in turn end up seeing these videos where they're bragging about exploiting girls. Big issue. So how can we fight against sex trafficking? You'll notice that's a picture of Will and Jada Smith, their daughter Willow. I've had the blessing of meeting these 2 people. I didn't get to meet their daughter, but Willow is the one who actually brought this to their attention. Jada Pinkett has gone to the White House about this issue at this point. She's totally lent her celebrity to this issue because they're seeing how serious this is. Community members have to acknowledge this as an atrocity against humanity. I don't want it to have to take us in this room being personally impacted before we actually see that this is an issue, because a lot of times that's what happens. People have to first be personally impacted. We've got to assume personal responsibility. We've got to raise awareness in the community. And we've got to support organizations that fight sex trafficking. That's not just Bridget Street. There's other organizations popping up in our community and surrounding regions to address this issue. And then stricter laws have to be enforced. I'm also a political advocate for Proposition 35 that's on the ballot this year in November. I don't say if it'll pass, I say when it'll pass. It'll increase the penalties against human traffickers. It'll ensure that law enforcement statewide are trained around sexual exploitation issues. And so I'm a huge proponent of Prop 35. Under current law, it's easier and more profitable to sell children than drugs. I just ran into one of my ex-pimps 3 months ago on the freeway. There's no reason why I, at this point in my life, should be running into this person and knowing that he's still exploiting girls and women in my community. No reason. Victims must have resources and community support so that they can be rehabilitated. And lastly, but I really need to emphasize this, is that we have to identify youth at risk and we have to provide them with prevention support. I don't know what my life would have been like if somebody would have told me about this issue in my community. Got to fight for the Bridges of the world. I'm really proud of the fact that Bridges' picture is on this advertisement for the CASE Act that's circulated statewide. You know, it will never make up for the fact that she lost her life, but other girls and members in our community, family members in our community, parents in our community are going to be able to better protect their children because of this proposition. And that's our contact information. So are we going to do questions and answers?
We'll take a few minutes. If people have questions or comments.
I don't remember you.
I know you. If I could, well, answer that question, but I want again. I've heard you speak before, and I'm very impressed by you. And your story is beautiful. It is. I really enjoy hearing you. You know, and I think being from Oak Park, Meadowview, South Sacramento, I know a lot of people also, in Oak Park. I know the music video was about the red chucks. It was 4th Avenue Fab was having it at Oak Park. And when you were talking about YouTube and gang members putting it on, that's lavish from Stars. So I mean, I'm familiar with, with that as well. And I know several young girls in Oak Park especially, who are prostitutes. Their families, their grandmothers. I speak to their grandmothers, and they go to Oakland and get them, and etc. And the thing is, they don't have pimps. I mean, and don't get me wrong. I'm not making light of nothing, because I know that was a tremendous problem earlier, 2000, from 70 on up. I know old pimps. Excuse me. I mean, I know old, women in that life. Older women and younger. So I think that we have to also focus on the young men, because I know several young men who are now calling themselves pimps, who wouldn't be a pimp if they hadn't had a prostitute, and the girl was already a prostitute. So we have a real issue with young girls who are in that life, not because they had a pimp, and also we don't have it's not organized. I mean, like Ray, I don't know if you know Raymond, but his son now is in Reno, and he's young. He's, it's a generational thing, but the thing is, he wouldn't be in that life either if it were not for the girl that was already in that life. So I'm not making light at all of what you said at all, but I think that we do have to put a program where who's ever working with young men, put emphasis on, because for them it's the same, they're stuck in a mentality also, and it's the same type of rush for them as it would be. It's the same disease for them as it is for a young girl. And they have been abusing often themselves as well. So I think that it's wonderful. What you're doing is wonderful, working with it. But I think we have to also go outside and, while we're working with Bridget, let's work with Bob, because I think that there is a tremendous need for it, especially when you're dealing with gangs. Again, because they're young, they're not organized, and it is like the hip hop and the music videos and the movies. There is an attraction, something attracting them to that, especially when you're in a city where you can't hardly find a job. And so that's an income. And that's. But again, I do really appreciate.
Thank you for sharing that, because when we're talking about young women sexually exploiting themselves, which happens, we call it self-exploitation. The consent for sex in the state of California is 18.
Exactly.
So a young girl is not consenting to exploit herself. They don't realize the long-term implications of what they're getting involved in. And there's somebody in their ear. You don't just wake up in the morning and say, I think I want to go be a prostitute.
Exactly.
Somebody has to be introducing you to that. And I'm glad you pointed out the side of, the fact that the young men are dealing with a lot of stuff too. I know some ex-pimps personally, and I know that the very same things that I was impacted by, they were impacted by it, but because of gender roles in our society, you're not going to see a heterosexual male in Daisy Duke shorts on the corner of Watt Avenue. You're just not. So.
In your presentation, you mentioned the word movement, and I believe anytime you're going to change anything, especially when you're talking about behavior, you have to create movement. So could you, my question is, what is your strategy for creating a movement in your area?
Well, one of the things that we're really excited about is a partnership with Strive to Free, which is a coalition of lawyers that are focusing on fighting sex trafficking. And so we're orchestrating a youth summit that'll be next year in September, where we're pulling in 700 youth leaders, so that's traditional and non-traditional leaders, and compelling them and preparing them to go and start their own anti-sex trafficking initiatives at their schools, because we believe in the value of peer-led initiatives. And so we want to mobilize a group of, well, a large group of youth leaders to go back and then do this at their schools, because they're going to be a lot more influential than some of us more seasoned folks walking in there and talking to them. So that's one of our approaches. And of course, the more we change our vernacular, like we're not talking, I don't go and talk about prostitutes and pimps or hoes and pimps. I talk about traffickers and sex trafficking victims, because as we change our language, then people, for some reason, are more moved with empathy and compassion around this issue. And we don't think, oh yeah, that's just old school, especially from the minority folks, you know what I mean? Because it's just, a lot of it is a part of our culture. So we've got a lot of education to do. And the more educating we do, the more people jump on the bandwagon. So Bridget Gray is the young lady that my organization is named after. And she was a dear friend of mine. I'd met her when I was 15 years old. We were both victims of sex trafficking at the same time. I got out, she didn't get out, she was killed. She was a huge part of the inspiration. But beyond that, it's the fact that the Christian community was my saving grace. So it was God's love showed through his people that transformed my life. And so I believe wholeheartedly in taking that same simple gospel message to girls in my community and seeing their lives transformed.
There's no name above your name. I wouldn't serve any other name. Yeah, sure, Mashiach.
There's power in the name. There's victory in the name. There's healing in the name.
Healing.
Anointing in the name.
Yes.
There is peace in the name. If you would speak aloud the name, then every knee shall bow before.
Every knee.
Every tongue proclaim. There's power in the name.
Power.
There's victory in the name. There's healing in the name.
So much healing.
Anointing in the name.
Yes.
There's peace in the name.
Peace.
If you would speak aloud the name, every knee shall bow.
Every knee.
Every tongue proclaim. Yeshua, Mashiach, Jesus Christ.
Jesus.
Your name
That name.
is above all names.
It's above all names.
And let us shout it to every nation.
Every nation.
You're the rock of our salvation.
It's the rock.
Yeshua, we bless your name.
We bless your name. We bless your name.
Yeshua,
Yeshua.
we bless
We bless your name.